Hey everybody, and Tony here with a review of Verdi's Aida, live from the Metropolitan Opera House with Marco Armigliato on the podium, which I heard is a radio transmission on the Met website. This transmission boasts a cast of international singers who have not only established themselves at the Metropolitan Opera House, but also in a lot of the international opera houses, starting off with Ekaterina Gubanova as Amneris, who was not only the superstar of tonight's transmission, but I've also followed her career for quite some time. My first experience with Ekaterina Gubanova was when I was 15 years old and I saw a couple of clips of her on YouTube singing the role of Niklaus from Offenbach's Tales of Hoffmann and even the Third Lady from Mozart's Magic Flute. And her career blossomed when she sang the role of Brangäne at the Teatro Colón in Buenos Aires, Argentina, from Wagner's Tristan und Isolde alongside Waltraud Mayer's Isolde, and I also saw her in the same role in the Met Live in HD production of Wagner's Tristan und Isolde, and here she was singing Amneris. And wow, she really knew how to sing the absolute hell out of this role. She combined vocal precision with a great sense of acting, which she managed to pull off wonderfully on the radio. In terms of her singing, she combined strength, power, and fearlessness with vocal beauty, elegance, and a gorgeous timbre. She really knew how to combine those elements into one phenomenal package. And she sang the absolute hell out of the judgment scene. She really knew how to be in complete command of that voice, that I was completely in awe of her performance. And if I would have been at the Metropolitan Opera House in person, I would have been as captivated as I am right now of her performance as Amneris. She continues to have that very plush, dramatic mezzo-soprano timbre, and she was an absolute animal on the stage, and she was just fabulous all throughout. She sang with such pure abandon, yet also deadly accuracy. She was, without a doubt, the absolute star, and she knew how to pull off this role with versatility and power, and I would really love to see her career grow further and further and further. She has bloomed very wonderfully, and I am sure that she is going to bloom with such flying colors, given the fact that she has become one of the most sought-after dramatic mezzo-sopranos of today. This is a singer that everyone needs to look out for because of her precise musicianship and pure sense of really knowing what to do on stage and how to sing certain lines. She combined those elements with such finesse and such strength and fearlessness that I was really captivated. And we also have Aida, the title heroine, sung by the wonderful dramatic soprano Liudmyla Monastryska, who sang this role with vocal beauty, yet a major sense of fearlessness, which should be no surprise as she has also established herself as one of the finest dramatic sopranos to have sung roles like Lady Macbeth, Tosca, Santuzza, Abigail, and many other roles of the dramatic soprano repertoire, mostly in the Italian operas. I have also seen this wonderful soprano live as Abigail at the Deutsche Oper Berlin, and I thought she sang magnificently in that role. She managed to really give her all as Aida, combining fearlessness with vocal beauty, and she really knew how to make great use of that fine and focused dramatic soprano instrument. Yes, I would have loved to have any soprano sing the high E flat during the triumphal scene, but you really have to hand it to Liudmyla Monastryska, who managed to sing this role with such deadly precision, but at the same time, really great, beautiful vocal lines that she managed to produce with such finesse and such fearlessness that I was also immersed in her performance. And the confrontation scene with Ekaterina Gubanova's Amneris was very well done. These two singers have worked wonderfully off each other, and they were absolutely fabulous in that duet. You could really feel the fierceness that Gubanova has to offer, but also the fearlessness that Monastryska also had to offer as Aida, but at the same time making her have such fine piano lines, making her all the more sympathetic and making her a very fine vocal actress. In terms of Marco Berti as Radames, even though he has a lot of fine high notes, I did not care about the timbre of his voice. Granted, he has been singing for a great amount of years, mostly in the spinto repertoire and also roles from the full lyric tenor repertoire, but overall, his vocal performance as Radames was meh at best, and oh dear lord, it's probably not a great instrument at worst. Sure, there were times that he sang his high notes really well, but there were other times where his timbre just sounded very unpleasant and not really my type of voice to sing a role like Radames. We could have had a lot of other tenors singing this role, like Roberto Aronica, Stuart Skelton, Simon O'Neill, Carl Tanner, Russell Thomas, any other tenor who is still quite young and fresh, yet still manages to have that strong Heldentenor quality to really sing this role. In terms of Marco Berti, he probably should not have sung this role because it seems as though that it sounds like it was not his best hour. There were moments where he was quite unfocused in terms of his tone. There were times that he sounded harsh. There were times that he sounded not so well. But despite all that, his high notes were still well emitted. He still has that squillo, which he has been quite well known for, and he manages to act this role quite well. It's just that in terms of his vocal production, I'm not really a huge fan of it. And we could have had a great deal of other tenors who could have jumped into this role, and I'm sure that they would have sung a lot better compared to Berti as Radames. But overall, he was as Radames in terms of his vocal production, but his high notes were quite well produced. Mark Delavan was an absolute star as Amonasro, and he has been singing this role for a great number of years. In fact, I would go out of my way that the low-voiced males were the absolute stars among the men, starting off with Mark Delavan as Amonasro. As I stated before, he sang the absolute hell out of this role, given his fine, powerful, and full-bodied Heldenbariton instrument, which he has been very well known for. This is a gentleman who has sung roles like Rigoletto and has also found himself singing roles like Johannaan and Wotan. I've also seen Mr. Delavan sing the role of Jupiter from Richard Strauss's Die Liebe der Danae, and he sang wonderfully in that role as well. As Amonasro, he sang with pure abandon, and he managed to really be meticulous with where he had to really sing with such great abandon and where he had to kind of really limit himself. He knew how to pace himself very well, and he was just an absolute pro as Amonasro. Solomon Howard as the king was phenomenal. I first heard this basso cantante singing the Grinch song on YouTube, and I thought he had a very plush and round instrument. And he was at his absolute glory singing the role of the king with such authority and such a handsome vocal presence that I was very immersed in his character. Dmitry Belosselskiy as Ramphis was another phenomenal singer, which, as I stated before, the men in terms of the low-voiced singers, from Mark Delavan as Amonasro, Solomon Howard as the king, and Dmitry Belosselskiy as Ramphis, were just wonderful. And Dmitry Belosselskiy managed to make a great use of his basso cantante slash basso profondo voice with Ramphis, and he sang with such pure abandon, helped by that blackened tone which he used very, very well. And the secondary parts were also quite well sung. Even though Ronald Naldi's voice sounds kind of old and not that fresh anymore, he's still a very fine musician as he manages to make the role of the messenger come alive. I would have loved to have a much younger singer sing this role, but you really have to give it to Ronald Naldi, who still has superb musicianship. Jennifer Check as the priestess was well sung, but she has a very fruity tone, which makes the priestess far more mature than she already is. Given the fact that Miss Check also sang in roles like Chrysothemis and even Aida in a lot of the smaller American opera houses, she probably could have also jumped in for Aida as well. And given the fact that she also sang roles like Leonora from Il Trovatore, her voice does prove to be kind of fruity in this otherwise lyrical part. But she still sang the role really well, and she has a very fine and focused spinto soprano instrument. So overall, while the singing was really solid all around, I have to give it to Ekaterina Gubanova, Liudmyla Monastryska, Dmitry Belosselskiy, Solomon Howard, and Mark Delavan, who did wonderfully in these roles. And the conducting done by Marco Armiliato was very well done. And what more can you expect from the chorus and the orchestra of the Metropolitan Opera House? Everyone went together and everyone gave it their all with such finesse and such strength that I was also very immersed in this very performance. And I'm sure that if I would have been there personally, I would have been just as astounded as I am now. So overall, the singing was fine, but I have to give kudos to Gubanova, Monastryska, Belosselskiy, Howard, and Delavan for great vocal performances, and the conducting done by Maestro Armiliato was very well done, making everyone go together, and it was just a fine experience. Well, that's all for now. For those of you who have listened to this particular transmission, I would also love to hear your opinions as well. Did you love all the singers? Was there a singer who really stood out to you the most? Or did you feel like the singing was best? Please comment below, and until then, this is Antoni signing off, and tune in tomorrow for my review of the anime movie Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust. So until then, good night everybody.